this is Esther from Estersaromas. I just wanted to do 4 small modified podcasts on wellness, introducing techniques from CBT that might be beneficial to people. So I'm just going to introduce Donna Treya, who's a professional in this area and who's also my sister. Hi, Donna.
Hi, Esther.
I suppose first off, Donna, I for everybody else, just wanting to know, how did you start? When did you start CBT?
I studied CBT 10 years ago. I studied the first form of CBT, which is REBT, which is Rational Emotional Behavioural Therapy. And prior to that, I had studied psychology and I'd done behavioural therapy for 15 years. So probably quite a while.
And what does CBT stand for?
CBT is Cognitive Behavioural Therapy. Cognitive is just the way you think, and behaviour is what you do. So sometimes it might be that you could be a little bit nervous about something, but you keep that nervousness in place by avoiding. So it may be that you would be nervous of going into Pennies, and you would avoid going into Pennies, and then you keep that fear in place for yourself.
Okay.
So CBT looks at both the thinking and the behaviour around somebody when they have an emotional disturbance.
Right. Okay. And you were doing a lot with schools at the moment.
That's right, yeah. I run an anti-anxiety program within school systems for PsyCap, which is a social inclusion community activation program. And it's about anti-anxiety for teenagers, run for second years. And it is about explaining what anxiety is, the symptoms of anxiety, and then giving the teenagers themselves strategies to overcome anxiety that they may be using now or may be using at a later date.
Okay, cool.
And also I operate an emotional intelligence program called Pandora's Box in primary schools for children from 4th and 5th class.
All right. Oh, that's good. 4th and 5th class.
4th and 5th class and second years, but the program has been modified to suit 3rd years, 5th years, leaving certs and so on.
I'd say there's an awful lot of information coming from the kids from secondary schools, like when they go into secondary schools from primary school.
Yes, there is. And anxiety seems to be showing up now from about some children are as young as 10 when they experience anxiety. So it's about giving parents and people who are anxious themselves useful skills, particularly as you hit upon around these exam times, because they can be particularly difficult for people who are anxious, and also for the parents who are dealing with the anxious teenager, or even just somebody who never experiences anxiety and only has exam anxiety, for instance, where they're absolutely fine the rest of the time, but they just start to experience extreme stress around these times.
There's so much pressure on the teenagers, I suppose, with exams at the moment. It's just
yes.
crazy.
Well, the Leaving Cert has always been a particularly difficult exam for people to feel relaxed about. I think everybody remembers the Leaving Cert.
Yeah.
You know, I do a talk for parents called the Inter and the Leaving, because when I went to school it was the Intercert and the Leaving Cert, and so that parents would understand that they were the times of stress, but now obviously there are other pressures for teenagers.
Yeah, and I suppose they're going through so much emotional stuff on, like, socially wise and stuff like this, but as well as that, the parents are at a loss at some stages because they don't know how to.
They don't know what to do.
And it's a worry, and I'd be honest, like, 2 teenagers myself, it's kind of, at times I think they think that you were never young, so that you're never going to understand what they're going through. But so,
well, it was Mark Twain that said that. He said, when I was 14 my father didn't know anything, and when he was 21 he knew everything. I'm amazed what he learnt in 7 years.
And you use different types of programs then, or like, is it programs, or would it be like sessions?
It's specific to the individual. I mean, if you're treating somebody on a one-to-one basis, then it would be tailored around their specific needs. or how their anxiety presents, if it is anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
But there are standard strategies and techniques that can be used by all parents with their children around these times,
Okay.
which might be useful for this
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, they could be used by anyone, basically.
Yeah.
So, with their child, whether their child was doing their junior certificate or doing their Leaving Cert, or just had difficulty settling down prior to examinations.
Mm-hmm.
And as we know, school is not for everybody.
No,
And so, but
that's
there is
true.
a requirement up till junior certificate at least. So,
It's an awful shame, I think, to be honest, that they don't focus enough on skills that children would have, like
Yeah.
the ability to actually think outside the box, or stop putting them in a box, really, to be honest.
yeah.
Because there's so many kids out there that they're so creative, and there doesn't seem to be any like subject specifically, rather than like academically wise, that unless you're academically, making a go of it, you can't really use the skill set that you might have naturally.
Yeah, and I think that's where I think teenagers like CBT, because it allows them to be creative about overcoming their own difficulties rather than it being an academic talk type therapy exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And people can be very creative about how they're going to overcome their own difficulties, and it's allowing both parts of the brain need to be used for us to be creative, and that's the best form of intelligence anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Is to be creative and also to be intellectualized at the same time.
Yeah.
So you do need to use both hemispheres of the brain to get the maximum usage out of your brain.
I suppose then, if they can use different techniques in relation to school and study and stuff like this further down the line, then if they come across a situation that they find difficult, that they could use those skills that they've been taught.
Truthfully, yeah.
Okay.
And I find that sometimes with people that they might talk. I might bump into somebody randomly and they say, "Oh, I'm still using that particular exercise, but I'm using it for this," and which is perfect.
Yeah.
Like the one that we were going to talk about this evening, particularly is one I use myself for lots of different things, not just for studying. So it does have a huge application, but it's really useful for what we're talking about this evening.
Okay, so I suppose, with no further ado, just to get into it, procrastination. I couldn't even spell
Procrastination.
that, I suppose.
Procrastination is a form of anxiety. It's about putting things off. Basically, it's about knowing that you have that task to do, and the amount of time you spend thinking about the task.
Yeah.
We've looked at that mathematically as well, and each time you think about it, you're using energy and you're using time. And if you add all that time together, then you'd actually complete your task quite quickly.
Yeah.
The difficulty very often for people is starting the task. And when you apply that to studying, at this time of year, people are thinking that they need to study the whole curriculum for the whole subject and so on. So it becomes a huge mountain. So when a teenager is facing into that, they talk about feeling overwhelmed, feeling sick, thinking that they can't remember anything, my mind goes blank. These are all the things that they say to me and to other people as well, and to the parents. I'll never remember it all. And so they try and cram at this point, which is not very useful for the mind, because cramming things into your short-term memory is only that. You will remember it short-termly, but you won't remember it on a long-term basis. So it's useful, but not very useful.
Yeah.
In terms of learning. But so the anti-procrastination exercise, which is the one that we're talking about this evening, is where you actually sit down with the person and you decide what time you're going to start. Very often you'll know your teenager's procrastinating because it's 10 o'clock and they're saying, I haven't done my homework. Or they're getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning to do the homework, or to do some studying, or they're saying, I'm going to get up early tomorrow, and they can't settle down to it. They're very, very likely to be procrastinating, and the task has become too big. And it's the same for all of us. If you're tidying up a room and it's an absolute mess, you're likely to close the door because the task is too big. Whereas if you went in there for 10 minutes and did a little bit, the task becomes smaller and smaller. So we apply the same principle to learning. So it's about setting the timer on your mobile phone, because that gives you your start time. So say you're choosing to study between 6 and 10 or 6 and 8 in the evening, then you set the timer. But to begin with, you'd only set the timer for 10 minutes. So the person was sitting down then at whatever space it is they are studying. They set their timer for 10 minutes. They pick up, their first thing they pick up is their favourite subject.
Really? I would have thought that it would have been the difficult subject that you would do first, just to kind of go into the harder things, get them out of the way, and then like you have your nice subjects or the things that you like the most towards the end, so you don't mind actually spending that time.
Yeah, and I understand what you mean, but the difficulty the person having is starting the task.
Oh, but that's why you're starting with the nice
That's
things.
why you start with
Okay.
that. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
I know it sounds a bit like you're starting with your dessert before your dinner.
But would you do all the nice subjects first?
No,
So,
no,
okay,
you
you'd start
alternate
with a nice...
them.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. See, that's what happens. You do
Okay.
10 minutes, but you set your timer for 10 minutes. When the timer goes off, you stop. Okay? So you've done 10 minutes of your geography book or looked over maps or whatever, and then the timer goes off. You stand up, you stretch, you might have a little bit of water, then you set your timer again. But at this, you put in a subject you're not too
A little bit more
happy
difficult.
with.
Yeah. Okay.
So you alternate them, but you only do it 3 times in a row. You then have a break for 10 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah? You're more likely to go back into doing it because you only have 10 minutes to do.
Okay. Yeah.
So
yeah.
you see,
it doesn't seem like a
exactly.
long haul.
And that way then each evening you can cover all the subjects, but doing it in 10 minutes. So the most you should do is 20 minutes, and then after 3 sessions of 20 minutes you would be taking a 20-minute to half an hour break. But all of them are timed, because the brain gets a sense of achievement when the timer goes off.
Okay.
So you get that kind of, wow, I've done 10 minutes. And 10 minutes doesn't seem like a whole pile. But actually, in therapy, we very often say, how do you eat an elephant? And it's one bite at a time. And this is eating your elephant one bite at a time. You can apply it to studying. It is very, very useful for studying. You can use it for reading. You can use it for your homework. But specifically around this time, it's a really good strategy for a parent to introduce to a child. It's really easy for a child to operate themselves. And then there's a sense of achievement for both when the timer goes off. It's like, wow, you can celebrate the fact that some studying did actually happen, and the person will feel like they're achieving instead of being overwhelmed and becoming really anxious.
Okay. So the brain would react to this better
Yes.
because
Than
of
trying to cram.
Okay. And like I suppose, to be honest, just to summarize it, so you're talking about you start with the favorite subject, you do this for 10 minutes, then you stand up and you stretch or take a drink of water, you start with the next subject that's maybe least favorite or and then you do that for 10 minutes, and then you go back to a favorite subject again.
Yes.
And then you're breaking for 20 minutes.
Yes.
Then you start with
You start then again with your favourite, because you're
favourite again?
likely
Okay.
to go
and
back
how many
in.
times do you do this? Or
I mean, the most people should be doing in any row anyway is about an hour before they take a natural break.
okay.
So that's 3 20-minute sessions,
Okay.
or 5 10-minute sessions they would be doing. They wouldn't be doing any more than that, but to take a longer period of time, because the brain continues to learn during the breaks,
Okay.
because you're not cramming. You're not trying to remember it. You're just allowing it to go in.
And do you do a type of exercise? Say they've done 3 hours now in total of study or whatever.
Yeah.
After the 20 minutes and the break and the 20 minutes and the break and whatever, then like the chill out time.
Yes.
Is there any useful tips that you would say that you would use in CBT that would like help you to switch off and get this proper switching off? Right, my studying is done. I need to chill out. I need to get a proper night's sleep. I mean, that's really important.
Yeah,
And
they
then
should all
focus.
stop by
Yeah.
a certain time. So that's why we'd be encouraging people to have all studying done by 9:30, so that there is time between sleep, and so that they can have some family time. So you can actually
sit down, and
sit
watch a
down
film
or
whatever.
talk, or but not like as a parent, not to then say, how did you get on, how
I
many
know.
pages did you do, all those sorts of things. It's about that time then, like, okay, you've done your work now,
Yes,
so now it's time to switch on.
it's your time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can sit and chat, and but it's not to encourage people to be studying late on into the evenings. It's not effective, and or so that they have a natural sleep.
Yeah.
But we can look at sleep hygiene as a program on another podcast as well, because that's also equally important.
So it's more the focus on the content than the time, really specifically to actually, I suppose at the end of the day you feel that at times, oh sure, I've spent 5 hours studying or whatever, but you know, really, to be honest, you should actually be thinking to yourself, what did I actually get done?
Yes.
So you're breaking it up, you're getting specifics, you're setting out your strategies, and you're gearing yourself to certain goals that your brain will be reactive to.
Absolutely, and it's how the brain learns. The brain learns by categorization, and that's how we learned from when we were small. And we learned that a bird is a bird and a bird is not a dog, and so on. We learn by categorizations. That's how the brain actually retains information in its computer. So if you put the information in there in the form of categories, then there's a natural space for it to go into. So that makes a big difference in terms of it's based on how we learn and based on how much we retain. But we also achieve flow when we give ourselves a specific amount of time to do something in.
Okay.
So it's a bit like when you've read a really good book and you kind of get lost in it and you lose time.
Yeah.
This is based on a similar principle.
Okay.
So you're achieving a flow, but you're studying.
And you're changing your mindset, I suppose, at the same time.
Yes.
Because then the thing that you weren't looking forward to doing, your mindset has changed now that, oh, I've done this yesterday and it felt okay, like, so you're going to do it again. But as well as that, I remember you were saying that you have things to remember, things that you were doing this with younger kids to remember certain things that you need to do in an exam, so that you'd go through rooms in the house and you'd associate them with, if you had to remember a list in a particular subject or whatever. And I thought that was fascinating, because I'm shocking bad at remembering things, and really when you use it, it actually works.
It really works. Yeah, we can go over those strategies as well, because they're really useful for things like biology, for things like where you just have to remember
specific needs,
loads of terms.
Yes.
And we'll talk about mind maps as well, because mind maps are useful for extracting information from the brain.
Excellent. Well, Donna, thanks so much. Thanks
You're
a
most
million
welcome.
for this. And
Good to
I'm
chat.
hoping that everybody has found something that they might find helpful. And definitely for the kids out there facing exams and stuff, but as well as that, definitely for the parents as well.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
Super.